Hi, Arcfieldweather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Thursday morning, November 10th. Nicole reached hurricane status late in the day yesterday as a Category 1 hurricane. Came ashore near Vero Beach in the east central part of Florida in the overnight hours. Continues to move west-northwest this morning, but it is about to make a sharp turn to the north and northeast. Here's the latest colorized infrared imagery loop from the College of DuPage weather website. Again, it's spinning now over central Florida with a lot of heavy rainfall and tropical storm force winds. It will soon make a sharp turn to the north and then northeast as it becomes increasingly influenced by a deep upper level trough that is moving across the northern plains this morning. That upper level trough has been traveling from the west to the east, and again, southwesterly winds on the front side of that trough will help to steer this in a more northerly and then a northeasterly direction over the next 24 to 48 hours or so, and the remains of Nicole will ride right up along the spine of the Appalachian Mountains, ultimately producing a significant rain and wind event all the way from Florida to Maine over the next 24 to 48 hours. And here's the latest official position by NOAA's National Hurricane Center, right smack dab in the middle part of Florida. Again, it moved westerly in the overnight hours, reached Category 1 hurricane status, now has sustained winds at 60 miles per hour, weakened somewhat from its landfall again in the overnight hours near Vero Beach. It will start to turn to the north and the northeast and ride up right along the spine of the Appalachian Mountains. And again, we mentioned yesterday that on the right side of a storm track of a tropical system moving to the northeast in this fashion, you can have some strong to severe thunderstorm activity, maybe even some isolated tornadoes, and that will basically be from near the I-95 corridor region to the coastline of New Jersey, Delmarva Peninsula, down along the Carolinas. Again, watch out for the possibility in this particular zone for strong thunderstorms during this wind and rain event that's coming up, maybe even isolated tornadoes. And again, all the way up to Maine, there will be significant rainfall and wind as well, perhaps gusts up to 50 miles per hour or so. Places like D.C., Philadelphia, New York City later tomorrow and tomorrow night as this system moves to the northeast. Even though it will be weakened somewhat, it will still have a tremendous pressure gradient with it, and you certainly can get some winds inland all the way up to 50 miles per hour or so. Well, again, in terms of winds, there can be gusts up to 50 miles per hour or so all along the I-95 corridor with this coming event. And here is a look at the total rainfall possibilities from NOAA's Weather Prediction Center for the entirety of this storm. Made landfall right in this region right here. Will start to turn in this fashion and ride up right along the spine of the Appalachians. Significant rain and wind all the way up from Florida to Maine, including the entire eastern third of the nation here. A lot of precipitation showing up here over the northern plains, and much of this in the form of accumulating snow. But again, anywhere from 1 to 3 or even as much as 4 inches from Florida to Maine over the next 24 to 48 hours or so. Well, let's take a look at last night's 0Z run of the GFS. This is the operational version of the GFS. We begin the day here on Thursday with a strong tropical storm, Nicole, centered right over the middle part of Florida, continuing to move west-northwest, but that will change shortly. Here is a strong surface low, and it's got a deep upper level trough associated with it, and southwesterly winds on the front side of that upper level trough will change this direction to a more north and then northeast, and we'll see in a moment. It'll ride right up along the Appalachian Mountains, again accumulating snow today across the northern plains. Let's now move forward, and here's that turn in Nicole at this particular time. By the time we get to tomorrow morning, rain will begin in the morning, early morning hours across the D.C. metro region, then spread across Philadelphia, New York City. Certainly the rain can be heavy at times later tomorrow into tomorrow night, and winds can gust all the way up to 50 miles per hour or so, even in the urban areas along the I-95 corridor region. In other words, even inland, certainly can be some 50 mile per hour wind gusts at the height of this storm tomorrow evening, tomorrow night, overnight hours. Here we are by the time we get to late tomorrow night, and again, it'll ride up to the west, just to the west of D.C. and Philadelphia, And on the eastern side of a storm track like this, here is that storm track. On the eastern side, in this region right here, you can have some strong to severe thunderstorms, maybe even isolated tornadoes, and certainly some damaging wind gusts as well. Let's continue to move forward, and here's some heavy rain all the way up into the mountains of central and northeastern Pennsylvania late tomorrow night going into the early morning hours on Saturday. Cooler air starts to filter in, especially late in the day on Saturday. Here we get into the evening hours on Saturday, and cold air starts to follow in the wake of that tropical storm. The whole pattern changes in terms of temperatures for the eastern part of the nation to a much colder weather pattern beginning later this week. And Saturday night, especially Sunday, the colder air will become very noticeable, and by Sunday night, early Monday, will likely be below freezing up and down the I-95 corridor region, a widespread hard freeze in some areas. And let's move a little bit farther in time. Here we are on Sunday morning. A cold air now dominates the Great Lakes, the northeastern part of the nation, and we'll have to watch potential for a system or two coming out of the south later next week. This is a Tuesday forecast, and then all the way into Wednesday. And some of this moisture will encounter cold air that will be entrenched across the Mid-Atlantic region, northeast U.S. It's not out of the question that there's some freezing precipitation, maybe some snow in parts of the east later next week, and of course we'll focus in on that possibility over the next several days. But in the meantime, Nicole has come ashore in east central Florida as a Category 1 hurricane and has weakened now to a strong tropical storm. It will start to make a turn over the next 12 hours or so from a westerly direction to a more north and then northeasterly direction right up along the Appalachians, and result in a significant rain and wind event over the next 48 hours all the way from Florida to Maine, and then that includes the big cities along the I-95 corridor region. Much colder weather pattern develops for the eastern U.S. later this week and going into next week, and perhaps right through the remainder of November. That's it for now. For ArcfieldWeather.com, I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.